Got her welded up everywhere we could reach anyway. We'll have to take it off and get a couple more places. I know we got right on the back side of like where this Cleco clip is, it's not welded. And then this whole half side through, get the camera on you, through right there is not welded either. So once it comes off, we'll get them things completed, welded. But we might as well start making a template for our sheet metal, which we're going to be doing. So sheet metal is going to go, I want to fill this. Now, I'm curious to see, throw in the comments what you guys would do. I'm going to encompass it. I'm going to actually put sheet metal on the top and sheet metal on the bottom. My biggest reason is if you just do it on the top side of it, well, then everything from below gets thrown up. And even if you were to seam seal and stuff like that, I'm just concerned that water, rust, salt, everything that can get up in there is going to get up in there and start rusting and start causing separation between these two joints that we have. So I think I'm going to do both sides. So it's going to be basically a hollow part inside of here. We're not really worried about both sides yet, but we do need to make a template. Well, really, it worked for both sides. We need to make a template so we know what our sheet metal needs to be cut out like. Now, you could go through and measure and try to be perfect and everything else with that. But a simple trick that you can do, my paper is only so long, it's only three foot. A simple trick that you can do, though, I don't know if you call this a witness mark or what you want to call it, but just take and drag, like I'm dragging this old dolly across it right now, and you can see where the pressure, I guess it's the pressure of it, actually causes a line to be, to be seen inside of there. This isn't the best piece of paper either. The big thing is just make sure that this thing doesn't try to move around, so that way you get an accurate assessment out of it through there. Dare I say, it's a good way to clean a dolly too. Once you get a little surface rust on a dolly, easy way to get it cleaned up a little bit. So we'll work on getting him done through there, and I really want to strive to just get the tops, but it's not really the end of the world if we don't, if we get offset, because we're just getting the initial template made. I'll trim this out and we'll actually set it on top and see how close that we were. Template is cut out, and you can see what it does. It lays it right down perfect in the center, the middle of where this is going to sit. So it doesn't give us all the way to the end. Once again, my paper was too short, but it's super simple. All I'm going to do is just cut a square, cut a rectangle piece that finishes this out. I'll tape it to it, and now I got a full-size template that I can lay out on my piece of flat steel, trim it around, and essentially have my cut ready to go right there. So let's go ahead and get it done. And there we have it, from paper to steel. Now, this was the very first one that I made here. I ended up using, this is 20 gauge is what this was. Didn't like it. I like the way it looks. But at the same point, I'm worried about it being really teeny while I'm going along with it. So I actually switched from the 20 gauge and I went to a 14 gauge steel, which is a lot more sturdy, or a lot more rigid, Now, granted, it's not welded in, so it's still going to be, a little tingy. But at the same point, I think this is going to be twice as rigid as what that thinner metal is. Not to mention, a guy goes leaning against it, putting tools on it, whatever else. This is going to be a lot less likely to dent than what this stuff here is. This stuff wiggles and woggles and everything else. This stuff's a lot more rigid. So I'm happy with the change. I do have one mop dip on the inside. That's where I kind of talked about this being a hollow type concept that's there with it, or like an encapsulated one. So I have this one on the bottom. It would get welded similar to how the other one is, where I'm just going to basically weld the perimeters. I think I'm going to grind them smooth too. The part that I'm conflicted on is I could go through and basically put in a pair of cross pieces that are there, like basically fish mouth, two pieces of pipe, and have it in there to be able to give that some rigidity to like support in the middle. Now I could go through and I could weld it, but I could also, I've got access to panel bond is the common term. It's 3M 8115 is the part number, but it is used as a super strong adhesive basically. So I could even do these cross members, and then on the middles basically do on top and bottom, do a little panel bond adhesive, clamp it tight, and let it actually hold it. That way I wouldn't have to. One of my biggest concerns is if I put these two pieces on especially on the top. The bottom's a little less, I really don't care as much about the bottom with it. But on this one, that means I'm either going to have to do a series of plug welds or stitch welds or whatever else. I really just don't want to do that. I want to keep this as straight and flat as I can. I don't want a bunch of body filler and things like that in it either. So I'm kind of leaning more towards, if I do these cross members on the inside, I'm leaning more towards the idea of putting a panel bond on to hold those pieces inside of there. So still welding it on the outside, but then using adhesive to hold it. I don't know yet. I know I don't want to weld these in until I get some weld through primer. So that weld through primer, I don't have it in here. I thought it was supposed to be shipped in today, but it wasn't. But I want to coat both of these basically encapsulated areas. I want to coat all of this stuff in weld through primer. Weld through primer, if you don't know about it, it's basically going to be a primer that has a higher tolerance to heat. So, if there's a traditional aerosol or something, it's going to burn off pretty fast, and it's going to burn off in a bigger area. So I'd say this was my weld site. Say this was my weld site inside of here. With a traditional paint, I may burn off, 2-3 times the size of that. With weld through primer, you'll basically just see where the weld is and right where it'll butt right up next to it and not burn away. So that's definitely something I want to have inside of here. I want to try to corrosion protect it the best that I can. You can use like a 3M cavity wax. That's what I'm going to do inside the chassis that's there. But I think I might even, once I get everything done, everything's welded up solid, I think I might even make like an access port somewhere discreet that I can put that cavity wax. It's basically a 3-foot long wand with a 360-degree spray. I could put it in there and actually coat all this as well. So trying to think for the future and not do all this work just to have it go sour in a couple of years, at most. So excited for it though. It's really, especially once you do, let's put the shiny one on. Once you start closing things down and you actually start to see a fender there, that's a super satisfying feeling to be able to see that fender start to, come together there. All right, just talked to you guys about how, oh man, I'm determined I'm going to get this inner splash guard stuff. It's going to get all built, and this idea and that idea. And I quickly realized that I can't make any of this the first time, the right time, until I know what my battery box is doing. I can't do my battery box until I know what my outside's doing. So needless to say, from the last time we talked, we're now dealing with what's on the outside. Now, I don't know, maybe you guys can comment down below if you've had this same situation before, but have you ever been like, oh yeah, that's the look, that looks fantastic? I don't know what in the world I was thinking with this curving setup that was there. I held that up in my mind, like over on the table. I thought, oh, that's it. That kind of mimics a CJ5. Oh, that's so cool. It looks like a freaking guitar is what it looks like. So I'm sitting there looking at it and it's like, what can I do to keep this kind of tough, dare I say, flat fender military look? What can I do to keep this going? And curves is not the answer on this one. So I ended up just all I did was just take my yardstick and just mark as close as I could to that guy and just tried to angle it. So then you back up and you're like, hey, that's not bad. That's got kind of a military look that's going on with it there. Something's missing. Something's weird about it. So that's whenever this piece of pipe comes into play, and you have that guy's silhouette on there, that carries the same idea as what we're doing up there, like with the tops of the fenders and things like that. I have quickly fallen in love with this idea. It gives me rigidity from the top. It takes me all the way down to the bottom. Now on the bottom, I'm gonna have a little bit to do. I don't have that done yet. I'm gonna actually have to take and make a brace, bracketed brace and stuff like that, to where I can attach, I'm trying to say it here, weld this guy and then weld a kicker that comes off of that to that actual bracket that's there. So I don't know, it's one of those crazy things where you sit here and can't do this because of that, can't do that because of that. I get to this and I'm like, oh, okay, yeah, I'm locked in on this idea. And terrible freaking idea to then come up with something that I actually really, really like. So I am going to, I didn't have a a fish mouth. I didn't have that made, like a template for that, so I had to go through, you know, just take a little bit at a time. I ought to make a whole video that's literally how to any angle, how to set that right that's inside of that. I don't know if you guys want to see that or not though, but anyway, we got a proper fish mouth that's there with it. We got good angles that's there with it. Everything's ready to be welded up. I think the first thing I'm going to do is get camera off, and I'm actually going to go ahead and tap this guy into place, just so that way I can start figuring out what I need to do down here for my little kicker and my bracket that's there. So anyway, long story short, complete chaos, but ends ultimately in a pretty good idea, which I like. Like I say, aesthetically, I really like that kind of look that's there with it. I think it's the best that you can have. I don't know, I was really wanting to have some kind of curve there just because it matches the curve of the tire, but I don't think that's the play. I think everything else that's going to be behind that's going to be rigid lines too. My battery box, I'm already starting to get ideas, you know, in there for that. You can see way up inside of there at the end of that pointy stick, there's the top of that battery box top. And whether I bend tubing to have it as a base, no matter what, I think I end up having a platform that's inside, kind of right here where this kind of multiple flanges is put together. But I have my platform for the battery that actually sit in there. And then I think I just mimic, whether it be to the front side of this tube or the back side of this tube, I just mimic that same angle to where mud and stuff can throw up inside of there. But no matter what, it's being angled and directed back. I also don't think I want to close this in. Like, I don't want it to be fully boxed in. I think I want to leave that kind of slotted. So in case mud or trash or water, whatever else gets in there, it's not like every other new car where it just sits there and rusts away until it finally comes through. This actually has a port, basically I don't know, a way to exit it throughout that, to where it never holds anything, you know, unless it just gets some massive buildup. But it never holds anything. It drains the moisture, drains the debris and stuff out of there. So yeah, I'm excited for it. Like I say, I'm gonna get that piece tacked up inside of there just roughly, and keep going from there. Okay, so I'm coming back to you now. It's actually been about a week since we left off at this, and where I was at before was I kind of laid out my ideas on how I wanted to do this down, this kind of down tube that goes through there to connect to the fender inside of that. I had a piece of cardboard up through there. I saved you guys the video time of having to watch me trace this out, cut it out, and everything else. I just went ahead and did it. So pretty good progress on that there. Not that there's too much to do, but pretty good progress as we see. However, we pull this guy back, we see something stuck up inside of there too. I actually went a little wild and kept going with the battery box that's inside of there as well. So we're not completely done with it yet. Get the hood open. As we look through there though, we do have a battery sitting inside of there. A couple things still need to be done. First, let's just pull it out. We got our, gotta get to a good view here for you. We got our two 90-degree hoops that are inside of there. We worked real hard here to make sure and get that guy nice and level inside of there too. So then where we need to be at is we still need to build a tray. I can't just sit the battery inside of here. Battery, I think total width across is 6.5 inches. If I was to do that, the battery is going to sit in here crooked like that. So I never really intended to have it just sit inside of these hooped bars that were there. I always wanted to build a tray. What was awesome that I discovered though is that my level sitting inside of there, I'm going to sit the battery back in it, actually is the perfect spacer for inside of that. So it already kind of saves me the guessing and checking of what, I don't want to say it here, of how tall to make it. So we can see once that guy gets inside of there, that battery actually sits in there really, really nice, really, really level too. So I've got an idea on that now. So I'm gonna pull all this stuff out right quick. I'm gonna get what my plan is together, and I'll jump back to this. So a couple videos ago, I actually showed an entire video on making templates to make a fish mouth, to where I could just lay, you know, get my pipe exactly where I need it to be, put this thing on there, trace it out, and I know exactly where and how I need to cut it. I don't need a fancy tool to do that. However, with this tool that I made, this template, what it's doing is actually doing more for that. It's kind of a good mock-up piece here for what I want to show you guys that I'm going to do. So you can see we got that fish mouth, you know, on this piece that's inside of here. But what I want to do is no different than how I have that total width to level that battery across. I just need to measure whatever that is, trace it to this template, and put it on both sides. So the fact that we're leveled off, I mean, I can literally make two identical ones. I want to build an actual battery tray, like a flat, you know, essentially a sheet metal flat tray that's there. I want to build and then center these guys, or push these guys kind of back, mount them to that, and then actually mount them, like weld that same piece of plate to where these hoops are through here. Not necessarily all the way around, we don't need that, but at least to where I can notch it out and I can keep everything perfectly level and welded up inside of there. I do have a dimple die on the way, which I was hoping to have for this video. It may still show up today, but I'm going to go ahead and work on getting the sheet metal part of this done. Get a few of these guys cut, get my sheet metal laid out, and I'll bring you guys back in the video for that. So unfortunately, it's been about another week since I've been back on, since I've been able to work on this thing again. Whenever we left off, we had our couple stand pieces. We had the idea, but we've actually got them made now. So we got them fish mounted and even on height and stuff. And then we needed to build a battery tray. So this is the concept in a template form that I have so far with it. The holes there, I'm going to show later on how we're going to do that. We actually talked about doing a dimple die on those, so I'm really excited. I finally got that tool in, but really excited to be able to actually get to perform that. I think it's going to look good, but I think it's also going to perform, you know, getting moisture and mud and everything else, actually give it a place to deposit. So you can see I got flanges that are up there. I'm conflicted. I did 1-inch flanges on these edges here. I don't know if they're too big or not, but I figured if nothing else, it gives me more room to work towards bending it over with a longer flange on it, and I can always cut it down. But so far I like it. Now you see that section through there missing. I'm going to show you guys that whenever we actually set the battery. I want to set the battery in this. Clearly I can't set it in there because it's just a piece of paper, but I want to set it out and actually show you. But then we have a notch, let's see, get in there, a notch done around these pipes where that will end up being a weld inside of there too. So this will be permanently affixed through there. Between welding it on that area and then welding it on our two kind of stands, if you will. This is going to be a permanent fixture to it. So pick this guy up. The way I have this battery set inside of there then will be terminals to the front side, and then sit them down inside of there. You see why I notched that now. So if we got those sitting up flush against that wall, I like the idea of that having room to get over. I have a couple ideas on how I want to go about actually strapping it down. If I want to use a, I don't know, I got a few ideas for that. So let's get this thing made first and we'll go from there. We got both template. We got template from paper into steel that's right through here. Now today's a special day for us because I've actually gotten two tools that I have always wanted to have in my shop. The first one, as we step back, is going to be a press. As simple as it is, this is something that I've always wanted. It's nothing that I've ever needed every day by any means, but man, whenever you need one, I just never have had one. It's something I've always wanted. So I was going to buy a Harbor Freight setup that was there, and actually my father-in-law, Randy, gifted this one to me. So thank you so much, Randy, for that. It's already getting put to work. The next thing is a dimple die. So simple concept that's through here, but it makes this really cool kind of tapered in indented hole. It's gonna be hard to pick it up on camera, but instead of it just being a hole, you know, a hole saw cut hole that's flat with a panel, it actually creates kind of a dove in indentation that's there. So it's really cool. I got that through actually our first sticker on the press here, which is this UTV distribution. I think it was 50 bucks is what I paid for it, and so far I've only made one with it, but it's worked well so far. So let me get this thing set up and let's get both of these tools to work. So we got our piece of metal that's through here. We got our dimple die ready to go. As far as I know, there is no wrong way to put this thing in. I actually started off with putting this one on the bottom. The only thing I can imagine is that there is going to be a right or wrong way to do it based on which side you want to actually put the indentation on. So we've got our panel set up accordingly with it. We get him centered onto there. There is a little bit of lubricant on it. I don't know if you need it, but I went ahead and put it on there. And we just start pressing down. As we get closer with it, make sure we're lined up, centered in it. I don't want to push it too much from one side or the other. All right, and we're gonna start to see it collapse. So I'm actually gonna pull you down a little bit lower than that even. You can see inside of there where you can see that raised, kind of that raised part inside of there. We're gonna see that completely collapse. Now what you're also gonna see is how the panel starts to deform a little bit. That kind of freaked me out at first, but as we get it to where it needs to be, it starts straightening itself back up too, which is good. So get it through there. I basically went snug and then 2 more pumps that's on it. So hard for you to see through there, but the panel does straighten back up. I think it's kind of getting lost in that line on the garage door there. Get one more pump down, go ahead and release it. That piece pops off real easy, which I was surprised by whenever I did it the first time. And here's what we have. So I'm going to show you the bad side of that. You naturally see that raised edge that's there. And then there's the front side through there that creates kind of that indentation. So I couldn't be happier with it. Once again, 2 tools that I've always wanted, and to get them both literally on the same day is pretty awesome for me. So let's get the other 2 holes made and let's finish this thing. Now one more thing with this dimple die that I can mention is something I liked about it initially whenever I purchased it was that they said that you do not have to have a press to do it per se, that you can actually basically get a bolt that fits through there and use a bolt, nut, and of course a bit washer on this side to collapse this thing inside of there. I like the idea, the dual, you know, versatility of it. Couldn't be happier to have the press that's here though. So the result speaks for itself. I couldn't be happier with it. Check those guys out, got good tools. Just when you think you're having a good day, everything's starting to look good and you realize that you had the piece upside down the whole time. So now my marks don't line up with where they originally be. You take this, you flip it over, they line up perfect. I already got them pre-marked again to try to re-notch this. I'm just gonna try it. The worst that happens is this piece gets wasted and I gotta build it again. But if I'm gonna see if I can make something out of this, we'll come back to it. Well, we all knew how that was gonna turn out. It looks like absolute trash. So I went ahead and had fun with our new tools once again and made one that was even better. So we got better fitment all the way around with it. We're flat now, and I guess this guy here, I don't know if you ever got a tractor and you need to put a battery tray, this got to be great for it in the scrap pile. So there we go. I am really happy with how it's turned out so far. I have not tried to set the battery in it yet. I'm going to do that here coming up just to make sure everything fits properly with it. I don't know if I'll show that on camera or not, but then we'll get some tats going on. We've got our pedestals down here that need to get welded on, and then we've got our joints where they weld to there. If you see this, these tabs really aren't intended to be any type of mounting to the firewall. I really don't see why I need it. I've literally got these big hoop bars that come under and bolt right there, so I don't think I'm going to worry about that. This is really just going to be for battery tray, you know, the containment of the battery in a tray. I do need to go through on these corners to once I verify everything fits, and I do want to weld those guys up in their corners respectfully there. So we are almost there finally on the battery tray. That's taken way too long to do, but I'm really happy with just overall how it's turned out. I think it'll be unique, I think it'll be functional, and I think it's time to get this thing done so we can move on to finishing the skirts on this fender finally. And here we have our finished battery tray, finally. We got to weld it in and stuff. Let's see how that battery fits. I know it is snug. Everything's falling. And there we go. Battery fitted in through there. I couldn't be happier. Literally, you can shake the entire, well, there it goes, finally moving. You can shake the entire tub, and we don't even have a strap or anything else on it. So that's really cool to be able to get to know how tight that battery fits. It's also going to kill us too if we ever have to put a different size battery if they change in their overall sizes, but that's a problem for another day. That battery's going to be fine. Okay, let's go into plan 2, or the next step, however you want to call it through here, and that was the bar that fell. So what I need to do is we need to start building fender skirts that's there. You can kind of see where I've got this rectangular kind of tubing.